I stay bout it, I'm not pouting. Break through walls and climb it mountains. If you want it, scream it loud and show this world what they've been doubting. Never waiting on the world to catch up to me. Leave it in the rear view. I wish that it was up to me. The world would never fear new.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Braintainment Show. Today's an exciting one. I'm joined by Sydney-based singer-songwriter Tim Conlon. And I was just kicking back, we're laughing off air just before, I was kicking back, relaxing and tuning into his latest single, Not Enough, which is an amazing song. We'll talk about that a bit more today, of course. But anyway, Tim has, if you're not familiar, gigged extensively, including some performances in front of large crowds, up to 80,000 people, supporting the likes of Jimmy Barnes, Jess Malboy. He's written and recorded a multitude of incredible songs, including, of course, the recent one I just mentioned, which I encourage you guys to check out. And he grew his profile some more off the back of making his way into the top 10 on Channel 9's The Voice on Team Delta, which was really cool to watch. His music is heartfelt. His voice is fantastic. And he's just a great guy. So I've been really fortunate to connect with Tim in recent weeks as part of a collective of lads dedicated to learning and growing and making our way through life, facilitated by the lads at Momentum. So shout out to those boys. So I know Tim also has some really important ideas around life and managing his mindset and things like that. So I encourage you guys to strap in for a really fun chat, but also a really valuable conversation today too. So with that all said, mate, thanks for carving out the time and joining me today, Tim.
Mate, thank you. That was, you know more about me than I know about myself. That was beautiful.
Thanks,
might just replay that one on a loop. I liked it.
I can send you the recording of just the intro if you like. Just add that to your meditative practice. Mate, it's always fun to, I mentioned in the intro there that we've connected a little bit off air, of course, and got to know each other a little bit, but it's always fun diving into someone's world when I've got a guest come on the show, sort of learn a bit more about them. And obviously it sets up the conversation for the potty a little bit better, but just makes it really interesting to learn about what motivates someone, what they create. And of course, music's been a big part of your life, which we'll talk about today. But I think that's probably a good place to start, actually, just to set the context for the rest of the chat. Could you maybe just give us the highlights really of your story in terms of how did you get into music and perhaps the snapshot of how you end up at this point today, what that has looked like?
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I can kind of trace it back. So before I even picked up an instrument or started singing, from a young age, my mum and dad would always tell me that I was that kid who just wanted to be the center of attention and just wanted that to perform always, just in life in general. Massive extrovert. I love connection. That's probably one of my biggest values in life, just connecting with people. So then that naturally led to music. I remember singing, Wonderwall by Oasis as a young kid, just loving it. And then basically when I went to the back end of primary school, at the school I went to, so I went to high school, and that sort of started at year 5 and year 6 at this particular school. And I happened to become best mates with a guy who wanted to start playing guitar. I wanted to start playing guitar, and we've stayed best friends ever since. He's over in Nashville now, my mate Mitch Thompson, killing it. And we just, that was the cool thing to do, to play guitar. And I think if it wasn't for him, and maybe it wasn't for me, with him, we wouldn't have kept going, because it just was the cool thing to do for us. And I'm so grateful that kind of happened. So that's where it started, I guess. And then, throughout school, we would, me and him, we'd perform at different school assemblies. We'd, play on the weekends. That sort of transferred into joining a band with a few other mates. And I was at a school that sort of supported music also as well as sport. And then when I left school, I thought, okay, what can I do as a job? And it was music. I just started gigging with that same mate together, which was so cool. And then we both sort of went solo, and it just made sense to me to do that as a job. So I'm very, very grateful that I've got to, pursue my passion and do it as a job on the weekends and throughout the week.
That's bloody awesome. Were you ever nervous? You touched on there that, you're an extrovert. So am I by nature. We're laughing off here about fighting for the airtime on the chat today. Did you ever find yourself, particularly in the early days, nervous to go up in front of the kids at school? Was there any sort of ridicule for doing music instead of just being the sports guy or the jock or whatever the stereotypes are? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that love music or whatever their sort of passion is, I suppose, but maybe don't execute at an early age, whether it's fear of
Totally.
ridicule
Yeah.
or what have you. So how did you find that experience as a youngster?
Totally. Yeah. I think I can remember getting nervous for sure, at different times, particularly with sort of like singing. I think for me, like guitar was cooler, but then singing at an all boys school was, potentially a bit more nerve wracking. However, my school, so there was, music and rugby. They were two of the biggest things. And I happened to do both. And some of the biggest, strongest looking rugby players are actually some of the best singers. Like, kind of these Islander boys I went to school with, they were incredible. So I was pretty protected, luckily, at my school like that in regards to singing. So I didn't get too nervous, but I think throughout the years I've noticed that nerves have shown up in different ways. Like I've realized this is something I've actually only just started to like be more aware of, but I'd constantly compare myself to others and put other people on pedestals and that. And if you're doing that, there's only one place for you to sit. And I think that was where my nerves translated into this constant comparison towards myself and others.
Mm.
Yeah.
I would think particularly in so many industries, but within music, there's, it's very hard to kind of break through, I suppose, or to penetrate into that, that higher level of success, whatever that looks like to you. So I can see how easy it would be in today's society, which almost all fields is very driven by comparison, like who's doing what. Social medias obviously add gasoline to that fire. So how do you kind of manage that? Because I think that would be really good for someone listening, whether they're a musician or not. I feel like the same principles apply in most arenas of life. How do you manage recognizing that maybe, there is work to do and you can always improve your craft, but also recognize that, I'm actually doing a pretty good job already and sort of stay in the moment, I guess.
Yeah. I love that what you just said, it's sort of acknowledging that, hey, I am doing a good job. I think if I could put it into one sentence, it would be like to know that someone else's talent won't take away from your own, just like someone else's beauty won't take away from your own, someone else's intelligence won't take away from your own. But yeah, this is something that I've only just started to become aware of, and it's because it doesn't sound like it's that bad of a thing, comparing yourself and putting other people on these pedestals and that, but yeah, it's like it actually is. I've learned it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow, but it's like it's kind of the opposite to self-love in a way, because you just, as I said, like if you put someone else on a pedestal, then where is there for you to go? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a very nuanced sort of, it's hard. And I feel like this sort of stuff we could riff on for hours. Like it's a very nuanced approach where it's like, I feel like I'm wildly competitive by nature. And I kind of like, I like going after things and pursuing goals and all that. But man, like, I don't know if you can relate, but I feel like there's certainly been times where I've, almost stunted my growth or just fallen out of love with the process of, whether it's trying to build a podcast or, my travel business or whatever it might be, fallen out of love with the process because I'm not where X, Y, and Z are. I feel like that's a dangerous game to play. And I would think for particularly, as being a musician, does that affect the creative process? If you're trying to write music, perform music, and you're just riddled by, comparison
Absolutely.
and that must be fucking hard.
Well, I mean, do you have, because you're a creative as well, like with all these podcasts and the content you create, like with our brains, I feel like no day is the same. Our mood's never the same each day. So some days our brain may be more foggy than other days. Like, do you find personally that affects your creativity?
Yeah, 100%. It's like,
sure.
very much so. And so it's like, well, the question then becomes, what do you do to give yourself that space to be creative, right? Like if I was, even just this conversation, for example, I want to be in this moment to get as much value for myself and for people tuning in. If I'm sort of thinking about 100 different things, I'm not going to be able to do that. So for me, I turn my phone off, I turn everything else out of the calendar and block it out. So that's just one example. But yes, it's very hard to be creative when you're stressing about stuff that really doesn't matter.
Well, one of my like my biggest influences musically is John Mayer. Like I just
what a guy.
it. Like just just a musician, not just a singer, just an artist and a storyteller, and and he did this talk at Berkeley because he studied there, and he just summed it up so incredibly with kind of what we're talking about now. He said that there's constantly information going in, like, this is all the content we learn, the theory behind music, the theory behind what you're talking about in your podcast, like what you can put on paper. That's the information going in. Then there's also the inspiration coming in. So that's sort of, so that information goes in, it's all there, it's ready to use. But then you sort of tune into when the inspiration comes in, and it's like, okay, give me my pad now. And you can start to feel when those times are when you can really create something truly authentic and beautiful. And so it's like, and when you're not always going to be in that flow, I've started to realize. So like even today it happened. I just did a story about it on Instagram. Like I went to the beach. I was like, I'm going to do some writing now. And dude, nothing came out. But I've had an anxious few days. So I'm not going to punish myself over that. Like it just was one of those mornings, but that's totally okay.
Mate, it's good to know when we connect with people like yourself that, carving out a career in something that you love, that it's not all wins every single day. And that some days it is like, fuck, it's just not working. But then as long as you don't write yourself off for the rest of the week, the month, and then just fucking give up altogether, there are going to be those days where the magic happens. I think that's just a beautiful thing. And then you end up, as long as you stick with it, you end up, being able to see through whatever it is important to you. And for you, obviously, being able to write some and perform some amazing songs. Just on the music front, have there been any, for you, mate, any kind of key memories or highlights so far that have really stood out for you?
Musically,
yeah.
There's been a couple. I've had a very, I've had a career that's been filled with a lot of, joyful moments over the years. I think doing things like even just singing at the carols in the Domain, like just being in the backing choir for like Jimmy Barnes and like, Jess Malboy and names like that. Doing The Voice, like that was a really, great experience. And it was such a learning curve for me because it was funny, right? In The Voice, you think going into that, it's all about, okay, I need to be perfect in this song that I'm singing. I need to fucking nail it, blah, blah, blah. But with working with the coaches, what they actually teach you is, because they know that everyone can sing, like everyone on that stage can sing.
Yeah.
They actually teach you it's about like embracing the imperfections, like kind of giving a fuck, but not giving a fuck in a way.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Because when you're watching an artist, you're not going to be sitting there going, he's flat, he's sharp, he's off, blah, blah. You're just sitting there going, do I believe this person? Do I feel it? Yep, I feel it. You know what I mean? And I think and it's just like, even in actors as well, they have that, like someone like Tom Hardy, it's like unapologetic. It's just like, this is me. I don't give a fuck what you think. Kind of like he gives a fuck, they care so much what they do. They love it, but they also let go of that sort of care, giving too much of a shit, and it's like, I kind of think of it as like, getting out of your head and into your heart kind of thing too.
Definitely.
Yeah,
there's something about authenticity that's really intoxicating. And it's like, just staying in the music lane, if I think about, some of the artists that I really fuck with, and, I love all music, but I'm a massive hip hop guy. But even across all genres, the people that I really like, they're my jam, are people that are certainly talented, but it's certainly not the best voice or the best lyricist necessarily.
Yeah.
They're just unapologetically themselves. They care enough and they care about their audience, community, and their craft, but they're not crippled by what should be or how they should be. And it's kind of like, particularly through a medium like music, I don't know if you find this with people that have connected with your stuff. It's like you moved on a visceral level, and there's something about that comes, I think, from authenticity. That's just like, this is fucking powerful.
Yeah, totally, man. I'm still working towards that. Like, I think because I'm on this journey of, self-discovery and growth and improvement and stuff. It's like how you and I met. It's fucking awesome, And I think for a long time, like I wrote what I thought other people would want to hear, and what I thought would be played on the radio, and what I thought I should sound like in that. But now I'm starting to realize, no, just Tim, like, you're a sensitive dude. You love being vulnerable and real and connecting, and like that's what you value in other artists. So show people that side of you. Like I like to think of my music as just like a page from my diary that I'm just handing to you. Like, so I don't, I've started to realize like, man, less is more. And if it's from a place of truth and no one can question it. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I want to bring into my music now. And that's what I will be bringing into it in the next sort of few years.
I love that. So what does the next few years look like for you then, musically? Is there, is it putting out some singles? Is there is an album that you're putting together? I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to the music space, other than just
Yeah.
being an avid consumer of music.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
I feel like there's no rules nowadays.
Yeah,
Like, yeah. Like,
I'm gonna fucking make a freestyle album and just
I
spit some
know.
bars.
Just do it. Whatever. I listen to that. Like, I feel like gone are the days of like, going and buying albums and stuff from the shop. So it's like, I've always released singles, but I actually do next year. I want to bring out an EP, like a body of work, because I want to do more than just one song. I want them all to tie in and sort of relate to sort of where I'm at in my life and where I've come from. Yeah, I used to want to be famous, but I think it was for all the wrong reasons. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it was actually about like what external things that could bring me to, give myself the self-validation or to like, make me happy. But now I'm sort of like trying to like just do it because I love it, which is, that's the way that we should look at art with, I think. And so I'm literally doing it for me. And like, I just want to make music that I'm proud of. I don't need to be a rock star anymore. Like that's the most important thing. Just release music that I'm proud of and that is authentic.
I mentioned the recent single, Not Enough.
Yeah.
What, for the people that haven't tuned in, I'll try and link it in the show notes for people to get access to. Give us an understanding of what that's all about and why you wrote that song.
Dude, that song came out of a very messy breakup, which, and it wasn't anyone's fault. We both loved each other, but we both had our own sort of things we needed to work through. And that song all came from the conversation I had with someone about how, because a lot of my songs come from conversations like we're having now, because that's what songs are in a way. They're conversations, And I remember just saying to him, like, sometimes love's not enough. And I sat down at the piano and I said, sometimes a hard thing and the right thing, they can really mean the same thing. I was like, oh shit, that's something. Like sometimes the hard thing, the right thing can mean the same thing, in terms of like leaving a relationship. And then once I had that line, the song just, poured out like really quickly.
Man, that is awesome. Is that generally what the process would look like for you? Sort of like a burst of inspiration or something that comes together that you can kind of play with and mold? Is that kind of how it works?
For me, yes. Like that's where my best work comes from. Like I can do the writing sessions with other people. We go into the room and we just, start from scratch. But that's more like a business to me in a way, and it's more like a skill. And it like I can write it like that, but it's never anything as beautiful as it would be from a moment that we just spoke about, like a true kind of moment. That's why conversations are great too, because that's what you want music to be in a way. You want it to speak to someone, and often we speak our truths in conversations in life. So some of my favorite writers are just more conversational.
Yeah. Well, just on that, then you mentioned John May before, who, by the way, he's amazing. He's my go-to when I jump in the shower. I play I've actually got it sitting next to me, so I won't say it. The Alexa, because then she'll go off. To play some of his music, and it is always again just hits me on a limbic level, and I think that's what's so amazing about music. Are there any other people, either current artists or past artists that have inspired you, particularly maybe as a youngster, and then people that really inspire you to this day?
Well, as a youngster, honestly, it was John Mayer. Like because that friend that I talked about earlier, Mitch. Growing up, his voice sort of sounded like John Farnham, so he could sing all these big notes. So I just naturally try and do that too, but I couldn't sing that because my register is just not up. Like it's just different. So I was like, why the hell can't I sound like him? Why don't I sound good? And then I found John Mayer, and I was like, oh wait, you can sound like a badass and sing, much lower and just from here to here. Like, so he was always a massive influence for me. A big one at the moment now though is a guy called JP Sachs.
Okay.
So there's a girl named Julia Michaels, who she's like one of the best pop writers in the world. She's got a few big songs out. She wrote "Sorry" by Justin Bieber.
Oh wow.
She's got this amazing song called "Issues." She wrote. She's one of the best. Like she's any big pop song, she's pretty much written it. And now they've gone together as this beautiful couple. But his writing is just like so conversational. He just says like the most simplest kind of things, but in the coolest ways. And it's just like, yeah, it's really inspiring. Some of his lyrics, like incredible.
And I suppose it comes back to that sense of authenticity, right? Which is like something that I talk about a lot in this program. And, you know, whether it's music or podcasting or content creating, or even just how you show up in the workplace, you know, generally like you want to continue to hone your craft and your skill set. But if you can be like unique in some way, which is going to come naturally, don't force it. Like just literally be you. It's the most oldest and sage advice to just be you. And I feel like it gets thrown in the trivial sort of cliche basket because it's shared so often, but at the same time it's shared so often because it's, you know, pretty powerful. I would like, I know for me, mate, you know, podcasting is just one small part of my world, but it's like, if I start trying to be exactly like Joe Rogan or, you know, whoever else there is, I'm just never going to be as good a Joe Rogan as Joe Rogan. Right. And that's where I feel like for people tuning in, this conversation that me and Tim are having, it's like, it really applies to all areas. And it does even apply to how you show up as a partner, as a mate. You know, there's particular guidelines, and I think you can learn from people, but ultimately it's kind of like you were touching on, Tim, like information absorbing, but then also having this inspiration to kind of let your body or your mind or whatever is going on there, whatever spiritually, whatever you're into, process that so it comes out in a way that's unique. Does that kind of make sense?
100%, bro. 100%. Like as we've touched on, that authenticity is key. One cool thing with that I find too, though, is like for people maybe starting out with podcasts or as a musician or a singer or whatever, and they're trying to find their sound or their style. It's like, I guess don't be afraid to sort of, like find those people who you resonate with the most. And, you know, maybe you sort of initially you do try and imitate them because you're trying to just sort of sound like them because you love them so much. But then you sort of end up, but you know, you're never going to be someone else. You're you. So you sort of find your sound when you almost like fail at trying to become and sound like someone else. Does that make sense?
Dude, more than you can imagine. You're not the first person I've heard say that, actually. Tell me if I'm wrong here with what I'm hearing you say, but I heard someone say, fuck, who was it? It was like a big famous artist. Might have been a rap guy as well. Anyway, they said something along the lines of to like learn, like it was the takeaway was this: copy from others until you find what you are, or something like that. So it's essentially like making movements is better than stagnation, right? So at least get in the game, start practicing, fucking up, making mistakes, learning. And if for now you need to try to get some, you know, have someone else as a muse for ideas, okay, but keep doing that such that over time you can turn, the goal is to turn into whatever your unique product is.
And it will, you know, it will over time turn into you because it's you delivering it. You know, you'll never, I could try and sing like John Mayer right now, but I won't sound like him. Like I won't, because our voice boxes are different. Like we're different Bill. He's American, I'm a show. We just won't. It's like, that's cool. But I think like in music and in any art, it's like, it's not that you're stealing when you like try, you know, you're sounding like someone else in a way. It's kind of like you just tip in the hat, you know? It's sort of like, cheers. Like,
definitely.
I like what you did there. I like what he likes what I did. And it's all, you know, we're all constantly hearing things from other people, and it's, you know, turning into inspirations in our work.
Have you worked with other artists on projects before? Like, is that something that that you've done or looked into?
Totally. I mean, my writing usually has been from more a solo point of view. Like I've done my best work there, but I have started to do more co-writes over the years. But it's always different, you know. I think because you get a bunch of different creatives in a room, it can either be incredible or it can go fucking like pear-shaped, you know? Like me personally, for example, it's like when I write, I just like writing from the heart and what is true to me. And I don't give a fuck about the rules. I don't care if it's a big chorus or not. I don't care if there's, you know, 12 bars in the verse or 16. I don't give a shit about that. You know? But then you get like a really mathematical kind of pop producer who knows what they're doing. They know how to make a song ready for the radio. They won't like that approach because they're sort of like, it needs to be this, regimented way and kind of like that. So again, what's wrong or what's right? There's no kind of answer to that, but it just depends. Yeah.
How do you find then? So that makes complete sense. That means that you probably spend a lot of time solo, which can be good. Obviously, introspective. That process, you're going to be more probably, come back to that idea of authenticity. You're going to be a bit more aware of what's going through your mind and in your heart and things like that. But do you ever find, like I do a lot of work for myself solo as well, and yet both of us we've already identified are extroverts, right? Which we're very people driven by nature. So then how do you find the lack of connection, I suppose, that comes sometimes as a result of just spending so much time in, well, isolation, I guess. Like I found that's been problematic at times when I spend too much time just fucking hanging out, doing me and not with other humans. Is that a part of it for you?
It is. I've always struggled to sit in the silence and be in my own thoughts, and that's something that I'm still working on now, like trying to find more comfort in solitude and that. But I guess, I just try and stay present to the process and try and enjoy it. And then some people, they recharge by spending time alone, and then other people recharge by spending time with other people, and that's totally fine, whichever way it is. I'm one of those people I actually recharge through being around other people and like connecting and.
Yeah, me too. All right, a couple more I want to throw at you, Tim. So from a voice point of view, there's obviously like people are into different things, but I think there's probably a universally understood good or bad voice to start with. Is that something that can be taught? Like, I don't know if that's like a silly question or like, is it something that you're kind of born with? Or can it, obviously improvements can be made, but can anyone become a singer if they put in the work is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Based on your experience.
It's a great question because I do teach singing as well. And I feel like if people love it enough and they're not tone deaf. I think it's rare when someone is completely tone deaf and you say, hey, sing this note, and they sing like my mum, for example, she'll even tell you she is fucking tone deaf and she is horrible. She even says that. But I think if people really love something enough and are willing to put the work in, they can, improve. It might not always be like, a superstar, but they can get to a pretty, a solid level kind of thing. I think, and when you mix that natural talent with hard work, then game over kind of thing. It's like in sport as well. But I think it's very rare cases where people can't. But I think most of the time, yes, they can, through hard work, and sort of that thing we talked about with, with letting go of the need to have this perfection all the time through our art. So, yeah, it's a tough one to answer, but
it is. I know. It's like, and for me, it sort of comes back to like it's essentially the nature versus nurture conversation, which is like a whole can of worms. That's essentially what we're putting on the table here, which is not kept to a fucking 5-minute chat. But I like that you share those thoughts. I like to think that that we can essentially change within very obvious sort of boundaries. If you're 3 foot tall, you're probably not going to play NBA and things like that. But I think in most platforms, you can grow and improve enough to certainly enjoy what you're doing and see progress and make a living. And even from a music point of view, I just look at some of the artists that just aren't that good a voice, but they've become maybe very, they found a sound that's very unique, or they write their music really brilliantly. I mean, Bob Dylan's just an obvious one, who can't really sing, but I grew up listening to Bob Dylan because my dad's like his number one fan. But fuck, like what a poet, right? And then because of his lyricism, you kind of connect with him emotionally. And then I actually love listening to him sort of raspily, awkwardly sing a song sometimes because I like his sound.
Yeah, some people need 1,000 different jazz chords and 1,000 different notes in their voice to portray connection and to share a story and a message. Some people need 3 chords and a spoken voice like Bob Dylan, and he can still just tell you what he needs to say, and he can make you listen. So it's that's a skill as well. I reckon some people are just storytellers and they find a way for their story to be heard. Like he's just one of them.
Is that something that you try and connect to? Is being a storyteller, like being able to take people on a journey, whether that's obviously through music, but then even sometimes just with chats with friends and family?
100%. Like I love that. I love thinking as music as storytelling. You know, like, and the reason why I like storytelling is because it brings connection. So I think like they're my favorite writers. You know, I've always liked music where I feel like the writer is just speaking to me. He's saying something to me that I've heard before, but in a cool way, you know. And it's like, music's like I feel like it's like an old friend you didn't know you had, and it speaks to you when you need to hear it most at whatever time in your life that is.
Mate, definitely. I've got one more for you, and I sort of throw this at everyone that comes on the show. I talk about on this platform. We talk everything from music, obviously, but then sports, psychology, philosophy, neuroscience, mental health, sort of everything in between. But at the end of the day, a lot of what I'm trying to get to the core of is like, how do you live a life of fulfillment, right? And that's going to mean, and I don't mean momentary happiness, like because you can fucking have a block of chocolate or do some illicit drugs and feel happiness and joy neurochemically for a moment, but a deep sense of fulfillment. Feel like it means different things to different people, and the practices of how you get that vary, of course. So for you, Tim, do you have any sort of practices or things or ideas that are important to you that help you sort of move in the direction of a fulfilling life?
Well, I can tell you a bunch of things not to do. We'd be here for a while. But look, you know what? I think that's a question that I think different people would have different answers to, but there's probably a few core things that might come up a bit, I think. And for me, in my story, for example, it's like, and I'm currently working through this. Like, I'm not on the other side yet. I'm still very much in it,
Yeah, me too.
And I think for me, it's like, I've always gone external to make me happy. Like, whether it's from, like numbing distractions, whether it's from, a girl to try and save me, whether it's from someone else to say, like, I've always gone and I've thought, if I get this, I'll be happy. If I do this, I'll be much happy, blah, blah, blah. But I've started to realize is that it's like, it comes from within, so I think it's about doing things that allow you to kind of like connect to that little boy or little girl within you and love them for who they are. Through that group momentum that we're both in, I know they talk a lot about having purpose, which gives us that drive and sort of helps us know who we are, kind of thing. For me, it's been about, like, I learned something the other day. It's like, in terms of relationships, like, the most pure form of love apparently is like loving yourself so much that that although it would hurt, you'd be okay without this person. And to me, at first, someone who is naturally quite codependent, that just sounded like, are you fucking kidding me? That's not love. Like, that's, what do you mean? Like, but I'm starting to realize how true that is. Like, it comes back to that that feeling of truly loving yourself within. And again, that's something that I'm still, working on.
Mate, that is very profound, and I agree aggressively with what you're sharing there. I think ultimately, how powerful would it be to be in a place where in almost any situation we can derive a sense of joy, fulfillment, content, calmness, and not be, and man, I can assure you, you're not the only one who has felt codependent. And, I know people tuning in will relate in some way. If you're, whether that's with a person or a job title or extrinsic things, if you're dependent on those things, then I feel like we're in a very fragile position. As soon as they're taken away, we're not left with a lot else. So that journey, and that's the key thing, right? And no one that comes on this platform, and certainly not myself, will ever say that they've clocked it. I don't think it's a journey that you ever finish. But I feel like if we're moving in that direction and our North Star is correct, just kind of really fall in love with ourselves in the right way, then like just having that right aligning sort of makes everything else a bit more kind of manageable and more enjoyable, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, what do you do to sort of find that fulfillment more, like in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
things you're doing today? Like,
Yeah, there is for sure. So there's some of the, to be honest, there's a couple of key practices for me that are all about the reputation I have with myself, right? So it sounds like similar to what you've touched on. I've always, I don't know if it naturally is the right word, but certainly in the past, I've been driven by accolades and attention, and I've always relied on my way with words. I've always had early wins with vocabulary and language, and so I've been able to use that at the bar to get the hottest girl at the bar, and just these extrinsic things. Which when you're 20, it's good fun, and it's great, but when you get a bit older, it's very it's just like if you're just relying on that, it's fucking empty. So for me, it's little things like cold showers, meditation, journaling, things that we've spoken about off air as well. Little practices that are like in and of themselves provide value, but for me, I'm convincing myself that I'm the kind of person that does things for myself behind closed doors when no one's looking. So it's like it's drilling, almost brainwashing myself for the better to change my sense of identity, which was previously I can go out and do this, I can make someone laugh, I can flirt with someone, I can build a business, I can do this and get accolades. But then ultimately all that matters is how I feel about myself when I'm lying on my pillow at night, right? And those little things, particularly knowing that no one's looking, doing that, for me, that gives a sense of pride, which for me is kind of, the rest of it kind of takes care of itself to some extent, like I generally pursue my passions. I've been pretty fortunate to not be too concerned what people think on a broad scale in the moment. Like I said, I'd thrive on attention and in all the wrong reasons at times, but generally I don't care about ridicule. I'll start a new idea or project and not care too much. So I've been okay there. It's more about, am I doing the real stuff behind closed doors? So to your question, a bit of a roundabout answer, but it's little things, cold showers, journaling, meditation. I don't do any illicit substances. I used to party a lot in the day. I don't drink till passing out anymore. Just little things that I just never do.
Yeah.
I don't tell people I just don't feel like it tonight. I just say I'm not the kind of person that does these things anymore. And for me, feeling good about myself when I'm by myself is like, I feel like that's what was missing when I was.
So great. Because you're doing it for the right reasons too. You're not doing it to get, validation from others. And I love what you just said about how it's like almost like you're brainwashing yourself to be that person who, does those things. Like, because I mean, how toxic can it be if you're brainwashing yourself in the wrong ways, like into believing you are that person who turns up late or who, fucks up relationships or,
for sure
spends a lot of money on fucking drugs. Yeah, it's like it can be so damaging if used the wrong way. Hey.
Definitely. So I feel like once I've got those bright lines in place that I just don't go outside of, well, now it's like this paradox of like discipline creates freedom. Like now that I've got those bright lines, I just never cross those boundaries. Now I can kind of do whatever I want in those boundaries and not have to second guess it every time.
That's bloody awesome.
Yeah. So, and look, like you said, I'm far from perfect, but I think that kind of framework's been really good for me. So, yeah, like I said at the start, mate, I feel like we could riff on this stuff for hours, but
mate, we could.
Maybe another time we'll get you on for the part 2.
We will. You've got away with the words, bro. You're good at what you do. So,
and mate, you're good at music. I wasn't just sharing a platitude earlier. I think the latest song, I'll put a link in the show notes. But anyone tuning in, check it out. It's a great track. If you want to connect more with Tim, where can we find you, mate? Are you online or
on Spotify, iTunes, just under Tim Conlon, TIMCONLON, and then same on Instagram, just Tim Conlon. So
we'll get the thing to come up and
come up, say good day, and come have a chat.
Well, thanks again, mate. It's been awesome, lots of value, and it makes me want to sort of dive into the music. Maybe it's not too late to start a career at 31. Who knows?
No, bro. Let's do some writing. Let's do some singing lessons.
You can do the hook, the melody and the hook, and I'll come in with a 16-bar rap verse. I don't know if it'll work or not, but
mate, no rules.
No rules. What you said, yeah. No, you can't renege now.
Yeah, we got this, bro. Easy.
Well, my man.
All right,
Until next time.
thank you so much, bro. See you soon, bro. Cheers.